This is a recording for the CUPHAT project. My name is Matthew O'Brien. Today is the 14th of July 2023 and I have here with me Brian Dunne. Thank you very much, Brian. Can you confirm for the recorder that you're happy to take part in this project?
Yes, I am, yep.
Fantastic, thank you. And if you wouldn't mind spelling your name for the recorder, please?
Yeah, it's Briandunne.
That's great, thank you very much, Brian. So we'll start off fairly broad, if that's all right. Could you tell me a little bit about your early life? Maybe where you were born, where did you grow up, and kind of what are some of the earliest memories that you have?
So I grew up in Glenmalure. It's a valley in County Wicklow. It's kind of the heart of the mountains of Wicklow, you could say, because it's kind of very geographically central to the county. So I grew up on a farming background. It was a predominantly sheep, but also some suckler cattle as well. I suppose all the memories really as a younger person are really very much about outdoors, interactions with the animals and very much around the family as well. So I've got 4 siblings, 3 brothers, 1 sister, so there was quite a number of us there, and plenty of neighbours around us too, kind of at our own age, even though it's a rural area. There was 3 houses together, only 3 houses really together in that kind of smaller location, but of them all the kids were kind of the same age, so there was a great kind of sense of kind of outdoors and adventures the whole time.
Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll come back to some of the kind of details of the farm in a moment. So you had a lot of people around you. Could you tell me a little bit maybe about your kind of school days? Did you go to school in Glenmalure?
No. So we went to school in Aughrim. So it's actually not the nearest school geographically, but because years previous to that there would have been a local primary school, but the way the parishes were divided then when that primary school closed, the kids from the Glenmalure area all went to Aughrim. So our actually closest geographic area would be Rathdrum, but we jump on the bus at 8:30 in the morning and head off to Aughrim. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. And do you have fond memories of school?
Yeah, great. Yeah, school was good. It was always, and I think as well, kind of going on the school bus, there was always kind of good memories of that, because again it was all the kind of the Glenmalure kids together, and there was that connection then. So when we'd go to Aughrim, we were the Glenmalure children, right through of all age groups. So it was, always good.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And then in school, were you involved in any kind of activities, sports, that kind of thing? I suppose, at a younger age, up till maybe kind of under 10s, under 12s GAA, again, it was more kind of the local club to us, which was Ballinacur. In school, then it was mainly playing football, or there was hurling tournaments every so often. But And what was your favourite sport then?
At that time, to be honest, we used to just play soccer every lunchtime, and that for me, that was the big one. Like, I was never particularly good at sport, never particularly good at GAA, so didn't stick with it.
It makes the two of us.
Yeah.
And so, local life in the area at the time. What was it like when you were kind of growing up in Glenmalure?
So Glenmalure was always kind of quiet, I suppose. It is a very rural area. It's very it's farms everywhere. But there's the local pub that was there at Glenmalure Lodge, and at that point there was always kind of visitors coming in and out, particularly in the summer, I suppose. Lots of hill walkers. I suppose even as a younger person, there wouldn't have been as much activity as there is now, as as it gets much more popular. But there would have always kind of been a flow of people coming and going. Like, I remember there was somebody who they actually camped outside in our garden one time, or they stayed in the hay shed, because it was spilling rain. He was a German tourist, and he still sends a Christmas card every so often just to be like, thanks so much. So there was that kind of interaction of other people flowing in and out as well. But particularly a very rural area.
Brilliant. And I'll come back to the cow tourist maybe angle later on. But what did you do, say, for fun in Glenmalure, like when you were young?
So when we were young, I suppose it was going out and exploring was most of it. It was either building a den or off in the forestry, or it was up and down the mountains. So there was we were really lucky really with the waterfall, which was just across the road from us, and particularly in the summer it was going exploring that every day possibly, or we'd be going off on our bikes. It was nearly like a gang of us, like the saying, that the bunch of us that were all the one age would set off up to the old mine spoil heaps further up the road. We'd be cycling up and down them on the bike, who could take it the furthest, that kind of thing. But yeah, it was always kind of out and about exploring, and then I suppose then as we got a little bit older, getting more involved in the local football club up until about 12, I suppose, at that point.
Very good. Okay. And did you have a favourite of those places that you went? Did you have a favourite place?
That's a good one. I don't know. I suppose because it was always kind of great. I suppose for me in particular, the river in the summer months and the waterfall, that was a big standout. Like particularly when you had the fine summer days, the things you remember really fondly was running off, jumping in, and everyone would just kind of get together. And the same, like right through from the kind of the younger ones to the older ones, and it was just good fun, and those are kind of the standout things, I suppose. Yeah, particularly around the water, I suppose, and the river. Yeah.
Okay, great. And would you still have an affinity for those things?
Yeah, definitely. Right. I think it's really
fantastic. Yeah. And so after that, then after school, I suppose. Getting out into the world. Did you go to university?
So I suppose after that then, went on to college in UCD. So I had done a year, first of all, in ag science. I wanted to do landscape architecture at the time, and done a year in it and didn't like it, and decided, I was like, no, this isn't for me, I'm out. So I went to Australia then, travelling for a year. While I was in Australia, I decided that I actually really liked the science element of the ag science degree, which wasn't the reason why I had got into it in the first place. But so I came back then, and then I done a 4-year environmental biology degree, again in UCD. Yeah.
Brilliant. And how was that experience overall?
Yeah, it was great. It was really good. I suppose the first year, to be honest with you, because when I was doing the ag science in that first year, I never really settled in, I suppose, and it was because I didn't really know myself if it's what I wanted to do or did I not want to do it. And that year off, I think, and going travelling around and just, as they say, finding yourself and what you want to do, I think that was really important, just for actually going, that's actually the area of interest. So then when I came back, I was much more focused and tuned into college work, and as I progressed through it and it got more specific to the area of environmental science, like because science in year 1, 2 is quite broad, so by year 3, 4 then I was like, absolutely, I am where I'm meant to be, which was great. Yeah.
And what year, was your first foray into university?
What year? So I finished secondary school in 2006. So 2006.
Okay, and then you went back. So you went to Australia.
Went Australia in 2007, and then started back 2008. I came back to start. Yeah.
And were you living at home for that, or were you living in Dublin?
I was living. I moved to Dublin for the first 2 years, and then then I was at home the next one. I could commute, so we're only an hour, so it was easy enough commute, really.
And when you were in Australia, did you have a certain pining for home?
Yes and no. Like sometimes, there's always times you're going to miss it a bit, but the majority of the time, no, I was happy enough, and it was a tougher decision to decide. Like I had said to myself, look, I'll have to come back and start college. And when I was over there, I was like, no, I don't think I will. I think I'll stay over here. But at the same time, there was something in my head saying, no, if you don't go back now and do it, it'll be next year, you'll be in the same scenario. What are you going to do then? So it was kind of a head and a heart decision. Sure. Yeah.
And just with those people that you would have grown up with, you mentioned the kind of groupie that travelled around together. Would most of them have moved on from the area, or would they have kind of stayed there? Or
I suppose some have stayed in the kind of wider area. Others have moved on. Some are in Australia.
Did they go to Australia with you?
No, they didn't. So I suppose the time that I was going, there was a couple of people that were going for a holiday, and they were just going for a month. And at that point, I was like, I had always wanted to go to Australia. It was just something, even from a very young age, it was always in my head that I'm going to go to Australia someday. So when they were going and they said to me, "Oh, do you want to come along?" I was like, "Yeah, I will go, but you know what? I'm staying over there. I'm not coming back with you." So I ended up, over there for the last kind of 6 months, just finding my own way in it, to make new friends, meet new people, and it was great. Yeah.
Fantastic. And so you then finish in UCD.
Yep.
What was next for you?
So after UCD, I had been working in Glenmalure Lodge, the local pub, the whole time since I was 16 in transition year. Started off as work experience, and I'd worked there the whole way through, from transition year into school, into college, and then went to Australia, back, and was still working there part-time. And then after I'd finished, I was in the pub full-time for that year, and like, it was grand. I was looking for work, looking for any opportunity that was there. It was the time of the job bridge schemes, where, you know, people were taking on kind of somebody for a month or 2 months or 3 months, but you have to be on a social welfare payment, I think, at the time. So I was kind of going, no, I want to get a job, you know. But it was really hard to get a job without the experience. So I ended up going back to UCD and doing a master's then in plant biology and biotechnology in 2013, 2014. Yeah, so then that kept me going for another year. So that was more study. And then after I came out of that, then I applied for a job here at Wicklow Uplands Council and got it then. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting how you're kind of love being outside, and you know, it came kind of full circle then.
Yeah, definitely. It has.
In many ways. And so, even just to kind of talk about, again, place and identity, what were, or indeed still are, maybe some of the local traditions in the Glenmalure area?
Gosh, I suppose, like, it's really steeped in history, in terms, like, when we were growing up in particular, we would have been very aware of the 1798 history. Do you know, there's stones and commemorative plaques dotted around the place, and particularly to that era. And that was always something that, you know, we were quite proud of, that rebel tradition and the rebel history. You know, Glenmalure was the stronghold of the rebels. So, and I think everyone in the area is very aware of that. So then in 1998 there was a commemorative festival as well. It was the bicentenary, and that was a massive event. You know, just remember there have been hundreds and hundreds of people marching up the road with pikes from all over the country. So yeah, that was really good. And I suppose aside from the historical section of it, other traditions, maybe, you know, even just interaction with the local clubs, the GAA is quite strong in Balnacar, even though I didn't play myself. You know, I suppose it's like any rural community, it's a big part of it.
And so, I suppose, how would you describe then the sense of community in Glenmalure?
Yeah, really good, really strong. It's one of those places, you know, if you knew you needed something, you could go and you could knock on the neighbour's door. It's always been like that. And there's a couple of different groups, whether it's the football club, or there's the Pure Mile, which is all around the heritage and kind of the looking after picking up litter, that kind of thing. There's a community project. So you've all these different groups that are working really in the same direction, I suppose. It's kind of funny because we'd often say, gosh, you'd think there'd just be one committee. But it's probably a recipe for disaster as well if you had everybody on the one. But it's all, you know, it's all built around pride of place, really. You know, there's lots of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And has the community changed much from what you remember when you were young? I know you mentioned obviously these kind of, there's these stalwart aspects of the community, but how has it changed?
It has, I suppose. Like, I suppose as you get older, you realise, you know, as a younger person, you're looking at all the older community pillars of the community, if that's the word, you know, and you're seeing them, and then as you're kind of grown older, and some of them are passing away, and then there's the people that may have been middle-aged when you were a child, and now they're the pillars of the community. But there's new people kind of moving in and out as well. Like, it has changed a bit. Like, there'll be new homes, new houses. There's people who've moved to the area, which it's great, it's fantastic, it's always good to see that. But just also then people that have moved away, like, it's quite hard to try and get planning permission, so that would have been a reason that some people would have moved. And then I suppose during the first recession, people moved to Australia. Like, as I was saying, there was friends of mine emigrated, they'll probably never come back. So there's definitely lots of ebbs and flows.
Very interesting. So you mentioned that there's obviously a great sense of local life and community spirit, and you've also mentioned the GAA club. And so, you know, now even in Glenmalure, what would the kind of main activities be around the area?
Yeah, I suppose from a community perspective, So within the community, I suppose definitely, that GAA is still the big part of it. I'm involved with local community project as well, which it's like a community-owned park, which the GAA grounds are there, but it's not a GAA pitch, it's community. It's very definitely, we're always very clear on saying that, because it's owned, it's managed by the community, so it's multi-sport, but there's community centre, and there's a boardwalk, and there's a community garden, and loads of different interesting bits and pieces with it. And there's people, as new people come in as well, they get involved in that. Then you've got like the Pure Mile group as well, and again, they're really good. They started off, it was about litter picking and keeping the area clean, and it kind of developed then into protecting the mining heritage of Glenmalure. Like, so there's lots of old mining buildings and mining features dotted along the valley, and the Pure Mile group were successful in getting kind of funding and getting some of those buildings preserved. So like, it's really good. It's kind of evolved into a heritage group nearly, which is fantastic. You know, it's really, really nice to see that happening.
Yeah, it's so important.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the community garden.
Yeah.
Would there be regular events held there? Or what kind of events would those be if there are?
Not so much. Like, I suppose we try to have something, you know, if it's trying to get somebody in to give a talk or something like that, or around the garden, or it's even just trying to keep active on Facebook and say, oh, this is the time of year to plant this or to plant this. And I suppose last year was probably more successful than this year. Everyone just seems to be crazy busy this year. Like, last year was great and there was lots of interest and lots of veg grown. This year the growing season hasn't been as effective. I see there seems to be a good few more weeds kind of coming up. So it's trying, I suppose, to keep the interaction going there. It's like everything, you know, sometimes when people just get so busy with everything else. And it was particularly after lockdown, there was great interest in the garden at that time, because like that community centre as well was important for people, because they were walking around. It was nice. There was access down to the river. So it was kind of a bit of a sanctuary nearly for people to get out and about. I know we're already, you know, a very rural area, so we can't compare to, you know, people that were stuck in the city during lockdown, but at the same time people have said they just liked coming up, kicking the ball around, doing whatever, taking part in the garden, you know, doing something.
And do you sense that maybe that brought people closer to those things that you mentioned, you know, from your youth, of going to the waterfalls, going to these kind of community sites? Do you think it kind of solidified or made their connection stronger to the area? Yeah,
I think so, definitely. And I think as well, maybe for people that were coming into the area as well, like, it was really nice to kind of get to know them as well, kind of after lockdown too, because like that before, everyone was so busy, and then lockdown hit, and then suddenly you're kind of focused on your area, and then after that you kind of have more appreciation for what's within your 5k, you know, and you start to rediscover some places. Like, so even like that, there was a couple of places in Glenmalure I had never been to before lockdown, and then lockdown came and people were putting up some photos. You know, there was a waterfall it's called the secret waterfall. It's not a secret anymore, because it's just kind of out of sight of the road, and it's absolutely gorgeous, and it was just kind of started to appear on photos and stuff, and then you're like, geez, that's actually within 3 kilometers of me. Do you know, how did I never see that before? So quite amazing, really.
Yeah, fascinating. And even from memory, you know, are there any kind of, we're speaking about local events, are there any kind of local events that maybe used to take place but now no longer do?
So there would have been a really strong drama group in Kirkee for a long time. Kirkee, which is kind of close to Glenmalure. It's all, I suppose, the Glenmalure Valley. There's Greenan, Kirkee, different townlands, Kirkee being one of them. So there's a Kirkee drama group, and they for years would have been put on different plays every single year. They revitalised themselves in could have been just before COVID actually, but they had a break for a long time, but they haven't kind of got back together again. And that was another kind of memory from childhood too, that you'd always be brought to play, you know, to check it out, to see it, you know, amateur drama group. And they'd have like years ago they used to have a festival where there's kind of different areas would have their own drama group. They'd come in, they'd do, you know, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night there'd be a different play on every week. So that was a nice memory too, actually, of that.
Oh, and would they do kind of classical reenactions, or would they kind of do their own?
No, it's more, you know, maybe, you know, there was the field, or, you know, kind of I'm trying to think, there was one, the white-headed boy. I have no idea who wrote that. I don't know why I even remember that name. But there was different ones, and it was always kind of either a mixture of, you know, the usual. There was a comedy or tragedy. More recent years have kind of gone for more comedies, because they said everyone wants to laugh.
So if you were to bring something back from maybe, I don't know, this is 2019, you're saying they came back, but you would want to see that kind of go back in.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be brilliant to see it, because like that, you know, it's something something that everyone really liked and enjoyed and looked forward to, you know, and there was a bit of discussion around it after, you know, and who was really good in it, and, you know, so and so was built for that character, you know.
So would you say then that, or would it be fair to say that you've always had a kind of natural affinity for, you know, upland areas, or
yeah, definitely. I suppose as a younger person I wouldn't even have said uplands. It would have been just outdoors. You know, that I suppose growing up on the farm, you're always kind of outdoors. You're connected to animals in some way, shape or form. Like, and again, for us, and that, you know, you're climbing trees, or you're in the river, or you're scrambling across rocks, you're going exploring. So yeah, there's always been a connection. And I suppose I even remember as a child I was always interested in, you know, what animals, or if there was an unusual bird or something I seen, you know, I'd be saying, oh, you know, what was that? Or I seen a bird the other day and I think it might have been a this or that, whatever it might have been. And, you know, my mother and father might have known, you know, and said, we don't know, you know, we don't, it's a bird, you know. So so I would have went and, you know, looking in books and that kind of thing and trying to figure out what it was, so the next time, and the same with plants and things. I always enjoyed trying to recognize what a particular plant or a particular animal were.
Fascinating. I mean, it kind of it's a good segue into kind of discussing maybe nature, I suppose, in the area as well. So, you mentioned that, you know, Glenmalure is farmland predominantly. What does that primarily consist of? What kind of farming would that consist of?
mainly sheep farming, and there'd be some cattle suckler farms as well. There's less cattle in recent years, and that's mainly around issues with TB. So we've massive deer population as well, and they're kind of been blamed as the link now between TB. So there's loads of discussion around that they're potentially a reservoir for it. Some would argue that they're not, others would say that they are, but I suppose regardless, the TB issue is definitely one of the reasons why there's not many cattle in Glenmalure anymore. It's mainly sheep.
Okay, interesting. And would you kind of know of any of the kind of, is there food produced in that area, or is it primarily kind of livestock based farming? What's the kind of
it's primarily livestock, for Glenmalure, it's nearly all livestock. There's no arable or tillage or anything like that. It's not really suited to it.
Right, okay. And you mentioned you grew up on a farm, right?
Yeah.
So was your farm cattle, sheep?
Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have any memories from?
Yeah, like loads of memories around the farm, you know. And again, you know, particular times where you'd have gathering of the sheep. You know, you'd be going up the hill, you'd be thinking you're a sheepdog running around after them. You know, first few years of your life. But that was always good, because when we were younger, there was more people farming on the hill. So there would have been 4, 5, 6 maybe farmers would have been getting together to gather the sheep in the same time, and that would be in for either shearing or for lambing. You know, in particular times of the year to be brought in. But there was always that sense of kind of, I remember them, you know, all the farmers would be sitting around the kitchen table at home chatting and talking about stuff. You know, it was that really kind of nice, again, maybe community, wider family approach. You know, they wouldn't have been all related to us, but it was always just kind of good crack, you know, to be telling stories and yarns to each other.
Is there any kind of folklore or like local tradition that was kind of brought up in those?
I don't know, like in there, like as younger kids, we would have been told the stories, you know, the ghost stories about Glenmalure, and the headless horseman that runs through the wood and don't be up there after 12 o'clock, that kind of thing. Or, you know, you'll see the light coming across the hill at particular times a year, you know. So yeah, we would have been fed ghost stories as well a good bit as kids.
Can you tell me more about some of them?
I'm trying to think back now. Like, there was certainly one of them, there was meant to be a family, I think. So further up, deeper into the Glenmalure Valley, we'll say, there was a story that I'm trying to think back now, it's so long ago, but at 12 o'clock at night, I think the area is called Clonakeen, that you would hear horses coming running through the forestry, you know, and you shouldn't let the horses catch up with you, that kind of thing. If you heard them, kind of get out of the way before they get you. And there was another forestry that was meant to be haunted, and it was linked to, there was the Battle of Glenmalure back in, I think it was 1501, and Fick McHugh O'Byrne's time, and they said that some of the soldiers were slaughtered, and it was kind of beside the battleground, or where the local tradition of the battleground is. So as kids we were always told that that's the haunted forest, you don't go in there because it's dark and deadly. So all of those kind of things.
Brilliant. And was there anybody that you can remember growing up that was a real storyteller, or you had a few of them around? Were there any people in particular that?
Yeah, there's a couple of people. So he would have been my great aunt's husband, Andy. He was one of those storytellers that there was always a story coming out, of something, and it would be just pure and utter devilment most of the time. Like, it mightn't necessarily be a ghost story, but it could have been just about his time as a child and the things that they used to get up to. And he was one of the people, you'd sit there and listen to, for hours, and he's just rattled one off after another.
That intergenerational thing is interesting. And even within your own kind of family, did you have any traditions, or was there anything that you would do with the farm on a yearly basis, or?
Not really. I suppose it's just a part of the farming calendar, where there would have been that sense of the gathering in, the shearing, the dipping. Like, the shearing was a big event as well, like that, because all the farmers would be getting together. As kids, our job would be to be putting the brand on the sheep or packing the wool into the wool pack. So there was all those kind of, I suppose, the busyness of the farming calendar. There was always kind of something to be doing. I'm not sure if you'd call them traditions in a traditional sense or not, but for us, there were the kind of things that we would have looked forward to, and we mightn't, at the time, we mightn't have thought we'd be looking forward to it, but when you look back at it, you kind of think, they were good.
And you mentioned that there's obviously the TB threat, I suppose, now. So in the interest of bridging past, present, and looking forward to the future, what's the kind of state of farming like in Glenmalure at the moment, do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely, I suppose, there's certainly not as much, there's not as much livestock, there's not as much sheep as there used to be. So those, we'll say, the 5 or 6 farmers that are there on our particular hill now, there's just my father and my 2 brothers are farming on it, so they have their sheep there. And it's the same in other areas. There's not the same numbers that there would have been. So it's, there's certainly not as active, if that's the word.
Interesting. So maybe we'll just move to kind of discussing upland areas and natural heritage. What are the kind of most important aspects of local kind of natural heritage in the Wicklow piece then?
I suppose, like, the biggest thing, that the national park is the jewel of the crown as such, for natural heritage in the area, the protected area, largest national park in the country. So that's major piece.
And maybe if you could speak about the importance of that.
Definitely. So I suppose that in the broader context, so it was, I'm not actually sure, don't quote me what year the national park was actually brought in. I know at the time, like, there would have been kind of a bit of controversy over it, because people that would have been traditionally farming those areas, there would have been potential conflict, to say, how is this going to work together if you're going to have farmers in national park, and how is it going to impact their activities? And over the years, I'm sure, like anything coming in, there would have been clashes and difference of viewpoints, but at the minute, like, it's got to a point where there seems to be a really good relationship between national park and the staff on the ground and the farmers in the area, so it's really positive to see that. And I suppose even through some work we've done with Wicklow Uplands Council, you can see people are all kind of singing from the one hymn sheet, really. Like, ultimately, we all want to see the hills in good condition. We want to have good habitats, we want to have the biodiversity there. If you talk to any farmer, they'll reminisce fondly about the amount of grouse that used to be in the hills, or the birds that used to be here that they don't see anymore. My father's the same. Like, he would say he would remember when there was a lot more curlew, or he would remember different birds that aren't here anymore. So I think it's really good that the park is there, so they have that, I suppose, protection, that level of protection there as well, and they can work with farmers positively, which is brilliant.
Fantastic. Away from the park, do you think there's any particular site or location that has special meaning, I suppose, to the upland area?
Like, I suppose Glendalough is number one. Everyone knows Glendalough, and I suppose because it's got, like, from from a tourist point of view, but from a local point of view as well, from community, there's the graveyard in Glendalough, which a lot of people from this area, from the Glenmalure area, there's a lot of older family members would be in the graveyard there. So there's quite a special connection aside from the upper lake or aside from any of the rest of the park, like the graveyard and stuff. I know for us, again, as a child coming up, like we've family buried in Glendalough, so we would have been over in Glendalough in the graveyard more so than up at the lakes, or more so than on the Spink or anywhere like that. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting place, I suppose, because it brings together all of those different aspects, and I suppose that's why now it's still such a popular area. It's gorgeous, or it's
absolutely. So that site is with Glendalough would hold significance for your family as well. If you have family members that are buried there, it's fascinating. So if I was to say to you, if I had a group of tourists and I was coming to you and I said, where can I bring this group of tourists? Where would you suggest and why?
Yeah, where to start?
Where to start? You tell me.
I suppose if it was me, you'd be trying to get them to go on a tour, or maybe not. Okay, obviously Glendalough is going to be a key visitor destination, but you'd like to bring them somewhere a bit off the beaten track as well. And like Glenmalure, I know I'm talking biasedly now, but like it's a bit less busy, a bit more undiscovered than Glendalough. So I think people are often kind of fascinated to come as far as Glenmalure because it's still so close to Dublin, and yet it feels very wild compared to Glendalough or compared to other areas. And continuing on then down kind of into the Occavana area, and out towards Glenavimal, like it's absolutely gorgeous, and it's that kind of sense of being a little more undiscovered. And I think for me, if I'm going abroad as well, I like to try and find somewhere that's undiscovered. I like to try and find out where do the locals go, where are the locals eating, what are they doing. I want a piece of that. So I think for me, I try bring them somewhere a little bit off the beaten track, down into these areas. Eat home.
Yeah, absolutely.
And give them the vistas as well, I suppose. You can I'm not saying there's anything wrong with going to the other places, but of course, you can nip back up, or like the open mountains, Sally Gap, all them. It's absolutely spectacular, to get those vistas.
Absolutely. And actually, you speaking of vistas, do you think the landscape has been affected or impacted by the way the people are now living?
I suppose yes and no. It's kind of a hard question, really. I suppose it's definitely changed a lot. Just even in terms of forestry, we'll say, because like right now around me where I am, there's been lots of clearfell, and suddenly there's views opening up that haven't been seen in a while, and it's absolutely it's fantastic to see them. But they've been replanted and they'll grow up again. So there is that kind of bit of changing landscape. But I suppose even farming practices, that kind of thing, it's going to have some kind of impact on the landscape as well. So there's been lots of discussion around that recently, and hill farming in particular tends to be kind of pointed out as enemy number one sometimes when it comes to habitats and environmental management, that kind of thing. But I think it's important that it's kind of the people and the farming and those activities have shaped the hills and the way they are, and even forestry as well. Like those forests would have been planted back, I think, in the 70s maybe, when people were needed to have some kind of income in these areas, and there's people who would have moved to Wicklow as foresters and still here, and the families are here. So it's just, I suppose it's an interesting dynamic to see it. As you said, I suppose I'm kind of waffling now about how it has changed in some instances. Some people might say it's for the worse, others might say it's part of the process.
And where do you come down on that? I mean,
I think there has to be I think we have to have people in these areas in the mountains. It's people that have shaped the mountains and the habitats, and a lot of habitats that are there because they're semi-natural. So if we don't have some form of management, they're going to change, they're going to be something different. And I suppose if we want to retain them, then we need to have people there. I think there may be some areas, I know there's loads of discussion and debate at the minute around rewilding, and now the nature restoration law has just come in and people are kind of asking questions, what does it mean, or how's it going to impact them? But like for me, I think it's kind of, you can't take people out of the equation. You know, I think we have to have people here. You know, these are communities, and they're people who've kind of depended on the uplands for their livelihoods for generations. So, like, we can't just say, okay, stop. You know, move out. That's not going to happen. It's not realistic. So I think, for me, there has to be a way of working with people and working with the landscape. You know, because ultimately, I suppose it goes back to that natural heritage piece. And you know, nobody's trying to set out to do damage. Everybody's there for the right reasons. There's this connection with the landscape, connection with the land. If you're a farmer, there's no more connection with the land than that. You know, it's so deep rooted. And it's the same, like, so if it's a national park as well, they're there for a purpose too. They're trying to do their job. So I think it's important to try to get everybody kind of working together on it. And yeah.
Absolutely. And are there any kind of conservation projects at the moment that you're aware of that or anything like that, or are there community groups that are trying to?
Yeah, so there's quite a bit actually. So the last couple of years, so one of the projects that Wicklow Uplands Council was working on was the CUPHAT project, which is Sustainable Uplands Agri-Environmental Scheme. It's a good acronym. And it was working with upland farmers in those areas to kind of carry out management actions that would go to improve the quality of the habitat. And farmers really liked being part of it, because we were kind of putting it to them as well. We were getting them involved in the management plans and what would they like to do or what would they like to achieve, and getting discussions going. There was a project ecologist who was explaining just the importance of why an area was designated, you know, because in a lot of cases people were saying when land designation, special areas of conservation came in, it was never really explained why it was designated. It was just, well, this is now a land designation, and that causes some resentment. So to have someone actually sit down and talk to them and say, you know what, you've actually got a really, really important habitat here, it's in good condition, and you know, fair play to you, or if it's not as in good a condition, what can you do to make it better? And I think farmers were really open and receptive to that kind of approach, that it wasn't kind of they weren't being dictated to, I suppose, which was good. And from that then there was some projects, and I know National Park now are doing one around peatland restoration, so there's some rewetting, revegetation of bogland higher up in the mountains. I know lowlands there's a bit of kickback now around rewetting and you know, that kind of thing, but up in the hills, because it's higher up, like the people that were involved in it were really receptive to it as well, which has been great. And as part of the CUPHAT project there was work in that area too. And then within National Park, it's not a Wicklow Uplands Council project, but again, I suppose as part of CUPHAT we had kind of started doing some planting of native trees, broadleaf trees along gullies and streams in the uplands, kind of a water protection measure, and to stabilise banks and that kind of thing, prevent erosion. And now the National Park are doing a major gully planting effort up in the Glenasmole Valley, which is on the Dublin border. So I'm not saying we can take responsibility for that, but it's kind of great, you know, that kind of things that were started maybe with CUPHAT are kind of building on to something else, you know, and they're moving into a next phase, which is brilliant.
Yeah, fantastic. I wonder if you could speak more about that biodiversity angle. That's really interesting, just in terms of the gullies. If you could tell me a little bit more about that, that'd be great. Yeah,
so with the gully planting in particular, it's about protecting water quality. It's also about stabilising the banks, but as well about trying to create more habitat into the uplands. So our project ecologist was quite keen that she's saying, look, there's some areas that naturally these would have been wooded valleys potentially. So there's some remnants of it as well, and she was saying like they're kind of getting grazed out of it in places by deer population or sheep as well. So she's saying, look, let's try and do smaller pockets along this and try and connect maybe some existing areas and in effect then create kind of linear corridors of woodland up into the uplands, and then it's creating a network then for biodiversity, for wildlife as well, and it's just creating additional habitat and supporting it. So as part of nature designations, the SAC, if an area is designated as a dry heath and open mountain heathland, it has to be maintained as that by EU designation. Whereas on some of these gully areas, we were saying, well, if we can plant these, we're not impacting the designation of the land. It's still an SAC, but it's just creating this kind of avenue into it, for want of a better word.
Brilliant. And what type of, so again, if we're thinking of biodiversity, what type of wildlife is being sustained now as a result of that?
Yeah, so within them, I suppose you'd be looking, just going to be the suite, particularly in the uplands. I suppose you're going to have range bird species. You're going to, like, on the more open mountain ones, you're going to have skylark, meadow pipits, that kind of thing. With the tree planting, you'd be hoping that you'd be bringing in some more bird species into them. Potentially mammals too. Are you going to have, maybe red squirrels or others moving higher up? Interestingly, in Wicklow, we have badgers at high altitudes that there's not necessarily in other areas. There's some high altitude badgers, I suppose, it's an interesting one. Yeah, there's sites higher up. So again, it's just going to support them and provide cover for some of those range of species.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. So we loosely talked about tourism, but let's go back to that for a moment. So how would you kind of view the current state of tourist traffic to this part of Wicklow, the upland areas?
Yeah, it's quite busy. Yeah, it's pretty full on, like, at the minute. Like, there's, we're on Dublin's doorstep, so every weekend there's busloads of people coming in, carloads of people coming in. Quite busy, particularly day trippers. I suppose that's the key feature of the Wicklow tourism trade. It seems to be it's predominantly day trippers that come in.
And do you think day trippers are I say harmful, but do you think that they would benefit more by staying here?
Yeah, I suppose the local economy is definitely going to benefit more if people would stay here. But the people themselves probably would get a bit more out of Wicklow as well if they stayed here. Like the few B&Bs, like, I shouldn't say the few B&Bs, there are B&Bs, but there's not many accommodation options really, like hotel wise, in Wicklow, and we'd often hear that coming back from different meetings or different groups, that, like, there's a lack of accommodation options for tourists. So even if they wanted to spend a bit more time in Wicklow, they find it hard to do that, which you can't chastise them then or complain about when the service isn't there. But people would say, when they're staying in Wicklow, they have the benefit of they have the hills, they've got rivers, they have lakes, they have the sea, they have historical sites. There's so much on offer. So if they could base themselves here, they're saying they'd be delighted to do it. And some that have come on a day trip that I've been talking to was saying, the next time they come back, they'll definitely, they'll base themselves here, and they'll expand on the Wicklow offering the next time. So it's really good to hear that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, just to kind of spin off that, what would some of the biggest challenges be to areas like Glenmalure, from or that tourism brings, I suppose?
Yeah, I suppose with the challenges, like the more rural areas, it kind of, particularly, you've got things like the car parking issues or the lack of, and then you'll have people that are getting frustrated because they're trying to get into their house and there's somebody that's parked in the way. They're blocking up roadways or narrow roads, if there's not the parking facilities there. The lockdown brought a lot more people into the outdoors, I think, and like there was a huge increase in, we're calling them dirty campers. I don't want to call them wild campers because I think that's totally different, but it was people coming, just leaving absolutely everything behind them, trashing the place. It was really, really heavy going during lockdown. I think for a lot of communities as well, they felt a bit trapped, that there was so much of this going on, and it's something, it has died down now. That's the positive side of it, that it's not as bad, but it brought out an element, I suppose, that maybe people hadn't dealt with before, and it was,
and that would have been local tourism versus international tourism.
It was all local. It's all local tourism, and I suppose because we're so close to Dublin, there was literally one weekend in Glenmalure that I was there where there was busloads of people that were arriving with crates of beer getting off the bus. They were coming for raves like every single weekend, and it was just it was crazy. It was a bizarre situation, and I suppose luckily that has died down. There's still kind of a certain amount of it still going on, and it creates tension and friction with people, I suppose, because nobody wants to be saying, don't come here, we don't want you, but it's like, well, if you're going to come, you have to respect the place that you're coming to, respect the people that are here as well.
Absolutely, and it speaks to that idea of regenerative tourism, And actually on that front, I mean, what are some of the kind of benefits I should say that tourism brings to the areas?
Yeah, well, like that. Look, I suppose without doubt, there's the economic benefit. There's so many businesses and providers that are setting up, particularly around the outdoors, hiking, hill walking. In Glenmalure, you've got Glenmalure Lodge. Like as I was saying, I worked there for 10 years throughout college. If it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for the walkers and the business that was brought there, was college an option? I don't know. Or certainly I wouldn't have been at home. I would have been probably in Dublin working, so it would have totally changed, I think, how my life experience anyway, so definitely you can see the benefits. There's massive benefits obviously to bringing tourists into the area, and it's the same we'll see here in Roundwood now where we are. There's the new cafe has opened up just down the road, and it seems to be kind of on the back of the Varty Reservoir trails, which are getting more and more popular all the time. So you can see really, I think, as an outdoor destination, Wicklow is kind of pushing ahead, which is, it's brilliant to see that. And it's the same, West Wicklow I suppose has kind of less waymark trails. It's a little bit more undiscovered, but I think there's huge options out there as well,
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if I was to kind of say to you, I'm a tourist coming to the area, what trail would you recommend that I do? What would you say?
Where to first? And I suppose it totally depends on what are you looking for. Are you looking for something that's like a nice easy stroll that you can wander around, like you've got the Varty Reservoirs? Are you looking for something more challenging? Do you want an open mountain where you could go up Jouse, or if you really want to take on Lug, you've got that one. So, or you can walk along the coastline. You can go Greystones to Bray. There's so many options. There's really something to cater for whatever you're looking for.
If we were to take the upland areas, what would you recommend?
Specifically the uplands. If it was me, I would walk from Glenmalure across into Glendalough, because I just think that view even down into the Glendalough Valley as you're coming down is absolutely spectacular. It's one of the really, really nice ones I love doing. Again, I know it's very local to me, so I'm biased on that one. But there's loads of the Miners Trail as well, actually. That's one I like. And again, there's a bit of bias there too, because I was the Glenmalure Pure Mile Group. But there's the nice links with the history of it, and it's linking the various different mining stops along the way. So there's information panels to explain. And those things, I just think it really adds to the experience of it. So if you're coming in as a complete outsider into it, it's nice to have a sense of awareness as to the landscape and what a particular feature is. Because often, even when we were growing up, people would have asked us about some of the, what's that ruins over there on the side of the hill, or what's that up there, so it's, people are interested, they want to know. So it's nice if there's some little bit of information available that they can get it while they're on the walk. Yeah.
Absolutely. And do you know who's responsible for kind of maintaining those trails?
Yeah, so it's kind of multifaceted. It depends on who or where the trail is. The ones within the national park, they have, the national park will look after the majority of them. The Wicklow Way, there's a management team behind it. The St. Kevin's Way, there's a management team behind it. And then other trails that are on the outside of it, they could be managed by community groups or Wicklow Uplands Council, or the Rural Recreation Officer as well has a big part to play, particularly with the Wicklow Way. So,
I was going to ask about communities playing a role in developing a development of these kind of sites, because like you're saying, it's in their interest as well, from a touristic perspective. So that's really, really interesting. Let's maybe some kind of reflections then. If I was to ask you, what's the best thing about living in maybe Glenmalure?
Yeah, I suppose for me, it's the access to the outdoors, and it's a sense of freedom that it gives me. I suppose aside from having the connection, to the community in it. I suppose it's a big part of it is that community connection, because there's lots of various different committees and groups and things are happening, or like there's an event or something. You tend to get dragged into everything, every event that's happening. You've some role to play. I find myself, I get dragged into it anyway, so maybe that's me, but I like doing it, and it's nice to be able to feel that connection or that sense of home in it as well. It's really, really Yeah, it's not. To be honest, I think I'd find it hard to move from Glenmalure long term at this point.
I'm a long way from those Australians.
Yeah, big time. Yeah. Whereas when I moved away first time, I was thinking, oh, no, geez, I need to get out of here. You know, I have to spread my wings.
It's a difficult question there. I suppose if you could change one thing, right about the area, what might that be?
About the upland area. Oh, there's a hard question, isn't it? Like, I'd love to see there been more, I suppose, recognition of the groups and the communities that are there, and I suppose it touches on that visitor management piece as well. You know, that there's so many people that do come in and maybe don't respect the area, or kind of think that, oh, look, it's a bit of a playground, or, you know, Wicklow's the Garden of Ireland, but it's not just a garden, you know, to play in. You know, there's people that live here, and there's people that, you know, there's communities here. So I think sometimes that tends to get overlooked, and, you know, even some online commentary you'd see, whether it's about management of the hills or farming or that kind of thing, it's just sometimes it can be very much divisive or dismissive of the people that are here and the concerns that they would have. And like, even again, COVID was a very kind of intense time, or a very, you know, focused, what am I trying to say? I'm not even sure. You know, I suppose a really sharp example of it, you know, just that intense nature. But again, it was just people just came in, really did not give a damn, for want of a better word, about the people that were in the area. You know, it was just, look, we're here, we want to get out, we want to enjoy ourselves. Sure, we're all in a tough time. Sure, what does it matter about you? You know, it doesn't matter if. And it was the same kind of right across the county. I know I was talking about Glenmalure earlier, but it was across the county, you know, where you'd see people kind of contacting us in Wicklow Uplands Council and saying, you know, look, there's raves in the forest, or it's down at the lakes, or, you know, is there anything we can do? And it's just that kind of thing. I suppose I would love to see more, recognition of the communities that are in these areas, and support as well, I suppose, of them. Yeah.
Very interesting. So, kind of again, an offshoot of that, what challenges do you think the upland areas, let's say, will face in the kind of short and long-term future?
Yeah, that's, I suppose, again, without doubt, I would see it back as that visitor management piece is a big challenge, you know, and just in terms of how you deal with it, because there is going to be more and more people coming, and like, they're coming anyway, so it's how do you deal with them, and how do you get people not just to land into one specific area, you know, spread it, whether it's tourism or whatever it is. And the same, even like if it's impact on the environment, that you can see that there's some trails that are getting well overused, or kind of beyond capacity. I've heard been mentioned a few times now, you know, that they're getting eroded. So kind of this dispersal of visitors, I think, is going to be an important one. It's not trying to say, you know, we don't want to stop people coming, but it's just how do you manage them in a really good way, so they're going to go home with a positive experience as well of Wicklow. And again, that the people that are in the area will not be getting resentful of the people that are coming in, are not going to be annoying them, and, you know, kind of impacting their experience. And
I suppose it's difficult, but how do you think that can be solved?
I don't know. There's an honest answer. It's a really hard one, because it takes a real multiple strand approach to it. You know, you need multi-agency, you need to have Wicklow County Council, you need to have National Park, you need to have OPW if it's Glendalough as well. Like, it's just takes a lot of vision, I suppose, and it's not something that's easily solved. I know, like, there is visitor management plans and things that have been drafted at the minute, and how they're implemented. It just goes back to various different agencies that all have to work together on it. But I'm not really, like, I don't know. I'd love to be able to say absolutely I know what we're going to do, we need X, Y, Z, because I don't think it's that straightforward. But I suppose, like, even if we could kind of improve even transport links into the county, that would be a major thing, because again, we're very dependent on cars to get into the Wicklow Mountains. You've got public transport kind of down either side, down the N11 and N81. You've got the Glendalough bus into Glendalough, obviously, and there's the new local link now that's linking across, but it's not as regular as maybe it could be. So those kind of things, I suppose, if there was some planning, a bit of forward planning went into those things, or even just in the summer months in particular, to try and, you know, disperse people a little bit more. And even if it was a bus service that was maybe a circular thing that you could drop people on, off here and there, then they get to see places that they mightn't necessarily have seen, and attract them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Just by way of kind of closing, it's an easy and a hard question. What does it mean to be from and living in this area, or in Glenmalure or in Roundwood? What does it mean to be from and to be living there?
Yeah, that is a hard question. I thought you said that was an easy one.
Easy and a hard.
Easy and a hard. Yeah, like, I suppose you've got this great. I know I have this sense of connection with it anyway. You know, have grown up here, having lived here, having moved abroad for a while and having come back, maybe it's given me more appreciation of it. You know, that you just have this sense of, living in a very beautiful landscape, but there's so much history around it, and it's somewhere that people want to be. You know, it is great, you know, that there's obviously people, if it's visitors and others, tourism, they're coming in, like, and it's really nice, you know, and to feel part of that, you know. Yeah, I'm not really answering your question. I know that.
I suppose it comes back to that idea of identity, right? And like, you're obviously very proud that you're
from Wicklow.
I'm from Wicklow. And it's a great insight on that. Before we finish, is there anything that you'd like to add to the record that we haven't discussed? Is there? I mean, I know obviously, you know, you're here with Coastal Uplands. Is there anything, you know, that you think is a really pressing challenge, or something that needs to be discussed or put out of the open for discussion? Or indeed anything else you want to add?
Anything else? I don't know. I think we've kind of covered a good few topics, really. Like, from my point of view, I suppose I just think I'm harping back to having people in the landscape, you know, and having, you know, kind of active and vibrant communities in these areas. You know, I think it's really important. And something maybe we actually didn't touch on was just because we are close to Dublin, you know, the commuting, you know, that now with people that are in these areas and even that are moving into Wicklow or into any of the villages, there tend to be commuting into Dublin. So there's maybe not the sense of connection with the community, but hopefully, you know, with working from home and technology and that kind of thing, there's a little bit of a move towards it, and people are kind of getting a bit more, I suppose, what's the word? You know, they've moved to Wicklow because they want to be here, you know, they love it because it's a great landscape, it's a great place to be. So at least they're getting the benefit of it now, you know, with technology. So I think that, and if we can try and improve that connectivity, if it's public transport, if it's technology, phone signal to be basic, broadband, all of that, you know, and then that, I think, is going to be a big plus for communities as well, you know, because then, you know, they're going to get the benefit of people that are actually have time to be more actively involved and get stuck in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Brian, thank you so much for that. It was really fascinating and very enjoyable. So we'll stop the recording now.